Give me a thumbs up. I really appreciate you guys. This is a big one coming from legalinsurrection.com. Federal judge rules that DEI and CRT trainings and policies can violate federal law. Somewhat surprisingly, Obama appointee Wendy Beadlestone holds that constant drumbeat of anti-white DEI CRT rhetoric can create a hostile work environment in violation of federal law. In an important development in the battle against diversity, equity, and inclusion and critical race theory, a federal judge has ruled that DEI CRT trainings and policies can be so one-sided and discriminatory that they can constitute a hostile work environment for white employees subjected to them. An Obama-appointed judge, so you know this is really getting out of control, ruled in favor of a Pennsylvania college professor who sued his employer over critical race theory trainings he alleged were anti-white, including one that said white teachers are a problem, according to a lawsuit. Finally, some sanity. A former professor at Penn State Abington, Zach DiPiero, sued for race discrimination after he was allegedly subjected to training that the English language is racist and the embodiment of white supremacy, along with additional tirades against white people in professional development sessions and meetings, according to his lawsuit. Apparently, this caused DiPiero significant trauma. Quote, "There's a constant ticker-tick, like a newsreel. I hear that disgusting evil phrase, white teachers are a problem," he said. "I wish I could get it out of my head, but I can't. I still wake up with this stuff. I still go to bed with this stuff. It still bothers me. It changed me in a lot of ways. You often hear that hardship leads to greater character. While that might be true, it certainly comes at a cost," he said. So, after resigning his professorship at Penn State, DiPiero brought a suit against the university in June of last year in federal court in the Eastern District of Pennsylvania. The case was assigned to federal judge Wendy Beadlestone, who was appointed to the federal bench by Barack Obama in 2014. Penn State's first action in the case was to file a motion to dismiss, which Judge Beadlestone recently denied. If she had approved that motion to dismiss, it would have been the end of that case. But she did not. According to Fox Digital, Judge Wendy Beadlestone of the Eastern District of Pennsylvania ruled on January 11th that Professor DiPiero had solid grounds to proceed in his race-based discrimination lawsuit despite Penn State's request for it to be dismissed. Beadlestone said that discussing the influence of racism on our society does not violate federal law. But when considering whether to allow the professor's suit to progress, she considered the type of CRT training used at Penn State Abington. Well, training on concepts such as critical race theory can contribute positively to form a healthy and inclusive work environment. But the way these conversations are carried out in the workplace matters. When employers talk about race, any race, with a constant drumbeat of essentialist, deterministic, and negative language, they risk liability under federal law. A review of the court's order denying dismissal.
And that's my point. If they don't roll this shit out right, you can have the best intentions, but if you pound this drum like Comcast did, white people are born bad, there's subconscious bias. The cause of systemic racism is white people. White people are bad. Be less bad. Be less white, To be less white is the same kind of stuff they were doing at Coke, but this, I don't want to quote them. I'm only quoting the things that I actually saw for myself in my work vehicle, in front of my work phone, sitting there in my work parking lot in a mandatory forced DEI training at 7:30 in the morning before I went to, my first job of the day at 8 o'clock. So, but the point here that he's making is that the judge is saying in this particular case, you lose that liability, that protection, if you're basically calling out a particular race in the workplace. And it definitely does create a hostile work environment. And so when I spoke up about it to a coworker who was black and a supervisor who was black, it didn't matter if I thought they were my friends, the supervisor, I was like, Cliff, what the fuck? This is some bullshit, man. This shit's really, I'm so upset about this. I'm going to have to go home. I can't even drive. I'm so upset. I can't drive throughout the day. I can't think. I'm distracted. I can't do anything. And so, next thing you know, I'm being investigated for this conversation that I had with him. And then he said to me, to my face, He said, well, we knew this was going to be emotionally provoking. I said, don't you guys in leadership know how emotionally provocative this sort of material is to everyday people who work with a very diverse group of people, where now you're kind of pinning some of them against the others as, part of your co-workers have this guilt that they need to carry. And the only way that you can ever, this was something in that training, the only way you can ever actually, work towards solving your whiteness guilt is to first acknowledge that you have a problem. And by this point, I just couldn't take it anymore. The subconscious bias, I knew for a fact that I was being accused of being a racist who was responsible for the systemic racism, and that basically because I was white, I was born bad. And then all of a sudden, now I've got half of my coworkers saying, now we're not friends anymore because some of them actually believe this shit, and of course I don't. And so all of a sudden now, we have disagreements at work, and it's really a hostile work environment when you start talking about, deep-seated issues like that. So next thing I was being walked out the fucking door, the week I closed on my fucking house. So, these big companies really should be held accountable for this stuff. That's why I'm showing these videos, because some have been held accountable. And you know what? I'm praying about it, and really, I'm putting it in God's hands. So I'm not necessarily saying this is what anybody should or shouldn't do. All I'm suggesting is, here are some examples where they found that, some of these companies, schools, and public places, or government funded, granted places that receive government grants, can't roll this shit out in a certain way in the workplace, because some of these things are actually federally protected. These are civil rights, and mine were definitely violated. And they did discriminate against me based off, they rolled out the DEI training. I don't know that they really did that, but when I asked my former supervisor, I said, because I trusted him, I thought I could bring this concern to him, and next thing you know, I'm being investigated. I'm like, dude, this is racist. This is discrimination. How do you guys in leadership not know just how emotionally provoking and aggravating and instigative these sort of trainings are? He said, we did know that. He said, why do you think we rolled these out? And then I later come to find out, they find that, the expendable employees are the ones that won't go along to get along. The ones who get frustrated or combative or get offensive, well, they're just ashamed of their white privilege and their white guilt. And, now all of a sudden, you're this hostile person in the work environment who's responsible for fucking systemic racism. It's such fucking bullshit. It's hostile work environment, it's discrimination. And when I spoke up about the COVID safety concerns, they sent me home. They just said, go home. They didn't have a solution. I offered solutions to the situation, but for a big company, they should be accountable and they should take responsibility. So that's my take on it.
Will reveal serious allegations. DiPiero describes a series of university-sanctioned professional development meetings and comments from supervisors that addressed racial issues in sweeping absolute terms. First, he alleged that Penn State instructed him to incorporate race into his grading to avoid being tarred as a racist. Then DiPiero alleges that he had to discard his own race-neutral grading rubric and instead penalize students academically on the basis of their race.
Which, that's pretty fucked up, but mainly what they were doing was creating the hostile work environment by basically calling all white people bad, you're born bad, you're subconsciously biased and prejudiced. So they're basically saying, I was born to be a racist, and unless I can at first admit that I am a racist, that I'll never, and they're saying all this shit, and all my coworkers are seeing this shit, and they're all thinking, I'm a motherfucker son of a bitch, racist son of a bitch. Now that's bullshit. It cost me almost, it caused a lot of controversy, and I was instantly so offended and antagonized and irritated and frustrated and violated that I said something to my supervisor, and all of a sudden, even with absolutely no prior write-ups, all of a sudden I'm terminated without cause, without due process and without any type of explanation, written or otherwise. So I think it is so messed up, and you hear the things that I'm telling you when you're watching these videos. This is a lot of the same type of shit. Is it ironic, or is there just a pattern of injustices here?
This occurred before the George Floyd hysteria in 2020. After that, things allegedly got exponentially worse. According to DiPiero, this atmosphere only became...
That is one of the craziest parts is this COVID stuff rolled out. It was real weird. I complained. I had whistleblower retaliation protections, I thought. Then the DEI rolled out, and I thought, well, what the shit is going on here? So I spoke out about that shit, but it just goes to show you, in an at-will state, you have no protection. And as a white person, so then, in the spring, 2020, March, that's when all the shit went down with COVID. Then, and at this point, my daughter's 6 months old. We just bought a house. Like, the week I closed on my house, Comcast fucking terminated me because of all this shit. I mean, these people talk about the way this stuff impacted their lives. My life, this guy probably had a regular fucking retirement. He was able to go ahead and just, retire. Or, whatever he said. I wasn't able to do that. I was fully dependent on my work vehicle, the ability to take care of my family, the ability to pay my mortgage, we moved a little bit outside of town. I was absolutely dependent, and my life was absolutely turned upside down. And when they talk about going to bed every day and waking up every day, that's the torment that I had for years until I finally just let go of it and said, God, please take this, do something, let me know that, and started praying for the wisdom. And I've started uncovering some of this stuff, and it's really crazy. So, you know what? They get what they get.
Became more heated after the death of George Floyd in 2020.
That was the point. Sorry about the tangent. But so while they were doing all this was right after the George Floyd stuff. So it was like all these people were going around all over the country, and they were jumping Asian people, they were mobbing on white people, they were destroying property, they were setting buildings on fire. So you didn't want to be a white person at this time because, well, especially if you complained about the social justice agenda and the BLM and all this stuff, well, then you were automatically against their fucking agenda, and you were automatically racist and privileged, especially if you were right. Talk about a fucking shitty situation.
It's the mass protest movement that erupted that summer. Defendant Damian Fernandez, then Chancellor of Penn State Abington, called all faculty and staff to join a conversation on racial climate on Zoom. Defendant Alina Watt, Assistant Vice Provost for Educational Equity, hosted the event. DiPiero experienced discomfort in a discussion about the scope of systemic racism. Wong led the faculty in a breathing exercise in which she instructed the white and non-black people of color to hold it just for a little longer to feel George Floyd's pain. Also, Defendant Anissa Smith, Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, sent an email to all employees calling on white people to feel terrible about their own internalized white supremacy and to hold other white people accountable. Well,
So how does that not create a fucking hostile work environment? Like I said, I had friends and coworkers and teammates from all walks of life, all ethnicities. Now they're saying, I have an obligation to admit what a racist I am and what guilt I should have and what privilege I have, and all of a sudden I'm around every day. Technicians do the same type of work as me, but all of a sudden now I'm this asshole. I can't believe that they were even allowed to do that. Honest to God.
Good to know that Anissa is now being held accountable through this lawsuit. See how she likes that. DiPiero further alleges that he then had to sit through 3 more events that singled out white instructors. First, DiPiero's supervisor, Defendant Liliana Naden, chair of the English department, and another professor led one of a series of monthly professional development meetings, which, as a full-time member of the writing faculty, DiPiero was expected to attend. In the workshop, which was on multiculturalism, the facilitators presented examples of problematic comments that a teacher could make to a student. Every hypothetical faculty member was white. Next, in a training video called White Teachers Are a Problem, the training's facilitator intimated that white colleagues should feel like the problem. The facilitator encouraged viewers to feel uncomfortable about race. Nadan and another colleague had hyped the video repeatedly. Third, Nadan imposed on the writing faculty a presentation and dialogue about critical race theory and anti-racism that attacked race neutrality, equal opportunity, objectivity, colorblindness, and merit, and condemned white self-interest. The chair of a major university's English department allegedly decries, among other things, equal opportunity, objectivity, and merit. Scary if the allegation is true, and of course it's true. He's not going through this lawsuit for his health. He's going through this lawsuit to stop this, to end this nonsense. There's more. 2021 brought more of the same. At an anti-racism pedagogy meeting in early January, Nadan said that she was thinking about grading as an anti-racist act, which DiPiero took to mean that teachers must apply different grading standards on the basis of race. That spring, the department put on another training presentation about white language supremacy as well. You can imagine the evils of spelling correctly. And the author states here, honestly, I cannot fathom why or how anyone would attend or work at a university under these conditions. So DiPiero complained to Penn State. And did they fix the problem? No, they allegedly blamed DiPiero. Defendant Carmen Borges, Associate Director of Penn State's Affirmative Action Office, asked to meet with DiPiero to discuss his complaint. At that meeting, she responded to DiPiero's concern that he had been made to feel humiliated, disgraced, harassed, and discriminated against by telling him that there's a problem with the white race, and he should broaden his perspective. Until you get it, she told DiPiero, he should continue to attend anti-racism workshops. By November 2021, Borges had resolved DiPiero's initial complaint and had decided that no further action would be taken. She concluded that the white teachers are a problem training, while it may be offensive to him, does not constitute discrimination towards you as an individual and does not rise to a violation of the university's non-discrimination policy. Can you imagine what they would have to do to...
So that is something that I have a huge concern with. He took this to the complaint of the affirmative action. I took my complaints about the COVID safety concerns to the EEOC and the Department of Labor, and I pretty much thought for sure that if I brought these concerns up to my leadership and rolled them up the chain through my employer, that I would not be exposed or given any kind of negative retaliatory actions, like being just told to go home when I had outside work to do to make money. So they were basically punishing me for raising concerns, and so that's why I sent the stuff off to there. But my point is the whistleblower complaint, they didn't even bother with for over a year. I had been long terminated before they opened the case, where I no longer had access to my work emails, I had no longer had access to my text messages, or any of my evidence. So luckily during that time I had sent myself correspondence and copies of all that, carbon copied myself. I went through all the chains, and then basically they said the same fucking thing here, which is, we don't see any violation, these don't meet the terms. But they didn't even actually do a proper investigation, and the fact of the matter was, I was already terminated. So my point is I think they had some of these places in their back pocket, and they thought that because it was such a gray area, and because of, in the wake of the BLM movement and all this George Floyd stuff, that the social justice was the gravy train that they wanted to ride to show that they weren't, going to end up. I think a lot of them wanted to prevent themselves looking bad, or at least protect themselves from being sued by black people, people of color, anybody for this stuff. They figured if they roll this shit out, they can say, well, we did our part, and that's bullshit, because like my supervisor said, they were fully aware that it would fucking emotionally provoke people and create a hostile work environment. And then the other coworker that was standing next to me said, how does it feel? Now you know what it feels like to be on the other end of the racism stick. And I was just so offended and appalled that, first of all, my two colleagues and coworkers and leadership, one of them was actually on the safety team, and a lot of them told me, if I can't just stop bringing up these concerns about safety, if I can't just go along to get along, maybe this job wasn't for me. And I had no write-ups. My metrics spoke for themselves. Great customer feedback, great metrics, on time, high 90s, hit all my promotions, Then when I started speaking up, I wasn't getting my promotion. You know, I was not getting, I was being told to just go home and shut up. And the point is hopefully that there's going to be justice for everybody and not just a few of these cases.
Do their white teachers to rise to their non-discrimination policy? I don't even know what they'd have to do if not this. Judge Beadlestone disagreed. Taken together, these allegations plausibly amount to pervasive harassment that has stated a plausible claim for a hostile work.
Which I'm not sure that harassment can't be put in there, because it definitely felt provoked like harassment. I'm like, these are definitely targeting me. I don't know how you tell the difference between harassment, discrimination, hostile work environment, which leads to wrongful termination, and then whistleblower protection, retaliation. I mean, how do you fucking sue for all of those things under one umbrella?
Work environment based on race. To be clear, discussing in an educational environment the influence of racism on our society does not necessarily violate federal law. But the way these conversations are carried out in the workplace matters. When employers talk about race, any race, with a constant drumbeat of an essentialist, deterministic, and negative language, they risk liability under federal law. And when there's liability under federal law, it means they can be sued. And that is what this is, a lawsuit because of what they did to this white teacher.
And what I'm wanting to know is, how come I'm not able to sue? Is it because I'm white? Is it because I'm privileged? Is it because I'm part of systemic racism? Is it because I'm subconsciously biased or prejudiced? This is what they were saying. I'm sitting here watching the same training as my coworkers who are black and brown and Mexican and Latino and every other fucking race and no other white people. So I wasn't the only one, but definitely harassment, definitely fucking discrimination, and definitely fucking retaliation for me speaking up about it. You know, putting me under investigation just because we had a confrontation, a heated discussion about it. Yeah, I was pissed off and frustrated and offended. And then my supervisor told me the leadership of the company knew that that was going to happen. So, what does that say? And why am I not getting the justice? I do feel like, I'm trying to pray about it, but I'm seeing more and more and more of this, and I feel like God's kind of revealing to me that, hey, maybe this is something that's going to come to pass.
For the reasons set forth above, Penn State's motion to dismiss will be denied with respect to the hostile work environment theory of liability pressed under Title VII and other federal statutes. Fox Digital summarizes. DiPiero's attorney at FAIR, Michael Todd Allen, reacted to the ruling saying, quote, "The opinion is clear that you cannot discriminate on the basis of race by wrapping up racist stereotypes as anti-racist, which is what Penn State did to Zach DiPiero." The university released a statement to Fox News Digital that said Penn State does not generally comment on ongoing litigation. In Ohio, America First Legal is helping a professor get justice with Ohio Northern University. From America First Legal, America First Legal defends tenured professor and sues Ohio Northern University for terminating him for objecting to illegal DEI hiring. America First Legal filed an amended complaint in a lawsuit against Ohio Northern University on behalf of legal scholar, author, and tenured professor at the university. In 2023, Ohio Northern University decided to terminate Dr. Gerber's employment. Egregiously, on April 14, 2023, school security, with support from armed police, removed Dr. Gerber while he was teaching his law school class. They escorted him to the office of Dean Charles H. Rose III, a defendant in the case, who told Dr. Gerber that he must either resign or face termination proceedings. Dr. Gerber learned that the hiring committee for the new law faculty had chosen candidates based on their race and sex. Dr. Gerber objected to the ONU's woke DEI-driven hiring practices and made complaints about it to the university administration and the EEOC, the federal organization that reviews these kinds of discriminatory complaints. Dr. Gerber refused to resign. The university then commenced termination proceedings against him. Neither the university nor any of its employees told Dr. Gerber what he was accused of having done, notwithstanding his contractual right as a tenured faculty member to be informed, quote, reasonably and particularly of the accusations against him. The Ohio State Court issued a temporary restraining order against ONU, requiring them to notify Dr. Gerber of what he was alleged to have done. A tenured professor is not like someone working at a fast food joint, and no disrespect to anybody working anywhere, but a tenured professor has made a commitment to a university, and the university has made that same commitment back that it's going to be a long-term relationship. They can't just fire him because they don't like his politics. When the hearing eventually went forward, the university ambushed Dr. Gerber with new accusations, denied Dr. Gerber his contractual right to confront the witnesses against him, and made Dr. Gerber subject to a sham hearing with a predetermined outcome. In the midst of this, the university defamed Dr. Gerber and issued a press release, which is a public statement, falsely labeling Dr. Gerber a threat to the physical safety of faculty, staff, and students. This is simply an escalation in the culture war. Even tenured professors will no longer be tolerated and will be terminated if they refuse to bend the knee to the current woke ideology. America First Legal is proud to represent Dr. Gerber and fight this unlawful termination. And here's a statement from Nicholas Barry, America First Senior Legal Counsel. Everyone understands the purpose of tenure is to protect academic freedom. It permits academics to teach, think, and speak in accordance with their conscience. The culture war has invaded every American institution. Now even right-leaning tenured professors are on the chopping block for standing up against the hive mind. ONU failed to give Dr. Gerber a fair hearing and violated the terms of his tenure contract because he objected. We must insist on the rule of law. It cannot continue to be rules for thee, but not for me. And that's another great action by America First Legal. They're involved in a lot of lawsuits and a lot of complaints to try to roll back DEI, CRT, and unfair treatment of people based on race. Let me know what you think of all this in the comments below. Always love to see your ideas. Please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications, give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you again soon with another video. And if I don't see you, I will miss you.
Hell, don't start a video. Pause that. So, basically, I'm going to try to reach out there. I'm still trying to find somebody to get some justice. If there's people out there that were willing to help other people, I have emails, I have correspondence, I have copies, I have all of this evidence. Surely there's justice somewhere, and there's, somebody willing to have the balls to stand up to this big company, Comcast, Xfinity. They run NBC Universal, but also partially the mainstream media. When I took this story to the local news network, they didn't even bother emailing me back. So I don't know who's got who in whose back pocket, but, may God have mercy on their souls, because that's all I can say. I'm on to the next one.